Welcome to Essential Ingredients. This episode is one in a 6-part series spotlighting the intersection of Dine and design.
So, welcome to Dine and Design. I'm Justine Reichman, and today I have my co-host, Bridget Cooper, and we're excited to welcome our guest, Michael Pearce, social entrepreneur. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have you and hear from you what you're working on today, and just hear why and how you became a social entrepreneur.
Well, it kind of started 8 years ago, formally, with an investment in a very tiny company called Thrive Market, which at that point was 3 guys in a basement of a church in Venice.
Wow.
With 2 fold-out tables and 3 fold-out chairs, with an idea to change the distribution model of organic and paleo and gluten-free food in America, which was a tall task. And most ideas that early in that space never succeed. So from an investment point of view, everyone in my fund consistently told me this is an idea that 99 out of 100 times will fail. No one's ever been able to do it. And I said, you know what? I have a feeling that this is not going to happen. This is the time. We're coming to an inflection point. And Whole Foods has had kind of a monopoly on organic food distribution for many years, 15 years, just because they had an exclusive deal with UNFI, which was the largest organic food distributor in America. And they had these bricks and mortar stores everywhere, but only in San Francisco, Austin, Los Angeles, New York, maybe Boston, 1 or 2 other cities, but the whole rest of the country has no access to the food.
Right.
What about all the other states? What about the Midwest and the South and the Northwest and the Northeast? All of these people can't find a Whole Foods. And even if they did find a Whole Foods, the prices are consistently 20 to 30% to 40% higher than all the other food that you find in normal conventional supermarkets. So the idea was to start a Costco model and put everything online, have no bricks and mortar at all, just have a fulfillment center, and then do your own deal with UNFI and charge a subscription, $60 a year, and we'll discount all of our food by 30 to 40%. So it's similar to what Costco did, but for gluten-free, paleo, and organic food.
Amazing.
So it started, and after a month, sales were just astronomical, and it went up exponentially every month. And we realized we're really onto something now. I didn't formally join the company. I've just been an advisor and a large shareholder. I was the very first fund to invest. My fund consists mostly of my family. It's just me, my wife, and my kids. So it's kind of a family office. And it then occurred to us that there are a lot of other people that share our view on food. And so we set up an influencer campaign, which I used years of being a film producer, and I had a lot of human capital that I'd accumulated. People that are celebrities that you know of but didn't really realize they were really interested in the organic food space. And we brought them onto the platform as brand spokesmen, and they drove a lot of traffic to the website. And after another 4 to 6 months of this process, it became a real movement. And what we found out from our data was that our number 1 subscriber in the United States were single mothers.
That's interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
That is.
Maybe they do most of the shopping?
I think obviously that's, from a statistical point of view, true, but it was more than that. It's more people want to feed their children healthy food, but don't have the option or can't afford to go to Whole Foods. And there was no Whole Foods near where they were. So in the Midwest, they partnered with influencers like Wellness Mama, and this woman drove millions and millions of people to Thrive Market just because she was such a respected influencer in the space. And she's a single mother with 4 children somewhere in the Midwest. I don't know her personally, but it was incredible what she did.
Did you have any data on how much greater access you provided by now having Thrive?
Well, there is now tons of data because Thrive also had a very philanthropic model where they gave away, and still do, a free membership for every paid one to a member of the United States military or public school teachers or families that live below the national poverty line. And they've given away to date, I don't know the number, it's well over 1.5 million free memberships.
Wow. That's amazing.
But that's making a difference.
That makes a huge difference. I mean, people that really would want healthier food.
Totally. Was that something that you came up with? Was that the people that started it off? Was it always their mission to have that sort of
Yeah, it always was. Nick Green and Gunnar Lovelace, the two co-founders, are extraordinary men. And I can't claim to do anything other than give them some seed capital amongst some other people too. I'm just a tiny little piece of it. But Nick is from Harvard and very quantitative, and Gunnar grew up in Ojai. And his mother owned that jewelry store, that famous jewelry store, which is still there.
Yes, the Cummings one.
That's right. And he grew up on a commune. And his mother was interested in organic food decades before anyone really even thought about it.
Right.
And he kind of mixed Gunnar and his down-to-earth and kind of organic nature with Nick's incredibly sharp quantitative brain and logistical expertise. You had two amazing entrepreneurs, and that's kind of what I invest in. I just invest in people, especially as an early-stage investor. It's all about the people. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's all about the bottom up right now. I believe people make the difference. Mm-hmm. We're all uniquely the same.
So if I can just go back, though, I'm curious. You invested in the people, but I know that you said you grew up in Canada, and you grew up on a farm, right?
Yeah, on a ranch.
And how did that play a role in your affinity or interest in investing in food and greater access to healthy food?
I think it did. It's hard for me to really answer that. Actually, I haven't given it that much thought because this all kind of happened recently in my life. But growing up, we did have access to wholesome food. We had huge vegetable gardens and all organic beef. We still do have some cattle on our ranch. We sold most of the operation. It was very difficult to make a living at it, sadly. And that's another whole story, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
Yes, we did have very pure food. My mother was always quite focused on that. And then my father had some health problems, quite serious health problems when I was a teenager. And he had a heart attack. And then he had another one. And then he had surgery. And that really left an indelible impression on me. So I watched him slowly descend, and he died suddenly in my second year of law school. So that's all influenced me for sure. But I didn't really know how to eat that well when I was in my early 20s because no one really talked about it much. Right. That was before Whole Foods. There was a store called Wild Oats in Santa Monica. There was a chain of them. They got bought by Whole Foods. That was kind of the precursor. And I kind of thought, this seems like a great idea. But I didn't really know anything about investing at that point. I was a film producer. Right. And I never really thought I would end up as a venture capitalist, honestly. My whole life pivoted after my film career kind of ended. I got tired of making movies and maybe a little bit disillusioned with Hollywood, quite honestly. I made a lot of movies, 12 movies in 7 years. And I thought, I just want to try something different. And so I actually joined a private equity fund out of London. And we invested in all sorts of different things, but nothing to do with organic food, because the other people on the investment committee, my partners in the fund, did not share my interest in that space at all. And so when they saw, startups in that space, and I said, well, I think we should make an investment here, that doesn't fit our risk profile. That's not a chance. So I felt very alone. So I ended up leaving that firm, and I took a chance and hired away a lot of the guys from that firm and started my own venture firm.
That's really bold of you.
Yeah,
that obviously had that gut feeling. That
part of it was motivated by this instinct that I think this space is not only potentially going to be a growth area, a good investment, but it's so redemptive societally. I just think we have to start looking at these issues. You can't just be about maximizing revenue. And I've always been a huge opponent of factory farming. That's something that even though I didn't know a lot about it, I still not an expert, but I know enough to where I think it's a real problem in this country.
I didn't realize that when growing up in New Zealand, and I came to America and I saw everyone was saying grass-fed beef, and I was like, well, what else is there? And that really was amazing to me that America just wasn't, they didn't have that knowledge that it can be that way, and it's great to see that changing now.
Well, ironically, I'm from Canada.
Right.
American. I am an American citizen, and I have lived here for over half my life. So essentially, I consider myself very American, and I'm very proud to be an American citizen. When I got my citizenship, it was a very proud moment. My wife's American, my kids are American, my businesses are all American, quite honestly. So it's not like I don't love America, I do, but I also feel that in order for us to maintain the system and have it work, we need to modify all of our investment strategies as a venture capitalist. I'm not talking about someone who grows food or does other redemptive things for society, but as an investor, you have to start backing companies that are not necessarily initially going to turn an enormous profit by generating large margins, but down the road are going to be very good for society as a whole. And that's when people are healthier, then everyone's going to benefit, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you look at when you're looking to invest in these companies and for the future?
Well, it's a good question, and it's very difficult to find early stage companies that succeed. I mean, 9 out of 10 fail. That's the statistic. I have been extremely lucky with my fund that I have 3 unicorns now. That's companies over $1 billion.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's great.
What are the 3 unicorns?
So Thrive is by far the biggest.
Right.
And then the social platform called Cameo, which I don't know if you've heard of. Cameo is a social media platform where we democratize fame. Anybody can go on the platform and get paid for giving a shout out or a birthday wish if you're a B-list celebrity or a C-list celebrity, or if you're just anyone for that matter, who's got something that people think's interesting. You go on a platform and you establish a market value for what your shout out costs, and then the platform takes a percentage of it and you keep the rest. And it is a huge business now. And then Cargomatic is a logistic company that developed new software to manage how ports are administered. Cargo and the big containers come off the ships. It's organized and structured, and all the trucks on our platform never are empty. It makes sure that the truck is full going to and from a destination. It's quite simple, but
How has that been through COVID with all the backups?
It's funny you should say that. So Cargomatic's been challenged because of all of the backup in the Long Beach port, where it's a Southern California company, and they have struggled because there's just no one had ever seen an unprecedented amount of supply chain issues that no one has seen before. So that company is doing very well, but it's certainly been challenging.
Sure.
But the pandemic energized my other 2 companies. So Cameo, because most celebrities weren't working for over a year, were doing a way to generate revenue, especially if you're not Brad Pitt, but just someone who's made the odd movie. You could, from your house, generate significant revenue by doing shout-outs on your cell phone to all your fans, on your fan base. So that business grew 100% a month for a year. And then Thrive Market was already trending well. The sales were going up. Huge growth every month, but then the pandemic just supercharged Thrive. Thrive's become an enormous company now with, I think, 1,000 employees, and now 3 huge fulfillment centers, and is, I think, going public this year.
Wow, that's great.
I'm not super in touch with them on a daily basis. In that respect, they're quite private about the plans, but it's a big platform.
That is great. I mean, the one thing, the takeaway from COVID, isn't it, that people are trying to be healthier and more mindful of their health and what they're putting in their mouths and cooking and all that at home.
Yep.
So it's great.
That's definitely part of it, and also just the fact that Thrive being deliverables before.
Right.
People still had kind of that barrier. Well, I want to go to the supermarket, but now no one wants to go to the supermarket. So if you have organic or paleo or gluten-free needs, there you go on your smartphone or your tablet, and Thrive goes straight to your door. So that's really helped that business.
That's so great.
So if we can go back just for a second, just to talk about some of the things that you might look for when you're investing.
Yeah, to me, as I said earlier, it's primarily about the people.
Okay.
So I could get a great idea, and there are a lot of good ideas. And usually when there's a really good idea, there's 3 or 4 people that are laser focused on it. So I'll meet with those 4 people.
Right.
And it's my job to find out who I think is actually going to make that idea succeed.
Right.
Because 3 of them aren't going to be able to do it.
Right.
And how I determine that is just, a lot of experience in investing and analyzing people and studying the sector and who I think is armed with the right qualities to build this business in this particular sector. Now, I'm by no means an expert in the food sector. I want to make it clear. I've only made one investment, and that was more because of the platform. I invested in the platform, which I saw I could disintermediate it. It was so ripe for disruption because it was only one big player. That was not a difficult decision. It was finding the right team to do it. It was very fortuitous that we found Nick and Gunnar, and then subsequently Sasha. Sasha came on board from The Honest Company, and he's a huge part of the company now. Sasha Sisadara.
Great.
Which is his name.
But you may not be an expert in the food company, you do have a passion around it. So does that mean that we can see future investments potentially in the food space?
I think so. I mean, something I noticed, I was brought to my attention recently that one of the top restaurants in New York is now all plant-based. Did you know that?
11 Madison?
11 Madison. All plant-based.
Amazing.
It's the same fixed price, $335. And I want to try it. I can't wait to try it.
As you should.
Yes, he's talking about new type of vegetables I've never even heard of, and a lot of them from Japan. And there was something like a new form of cabbage that he referenced that I had never heard of. And I'm dying to try it. I mean, I like meat, but I can only eat it because of dietary constraints maybe once a week. And it's only lean, organic beef. I'll eat nothing else. I'll never eat fast food, and I don't eat fried food. I thought that was just really amazing that he had the, whatever word you want to use, to actually do it and not risk alienate his clientele.
Right, and I do think he's been around for a long time. He's got a solid client base. He's got a solid following, and I do think as a leader in that industry, people will follow.
Yes, yeah.
That's what he's saying too.
I mean, that's what I think. But Bridget, I have a question for you. I mean, coming from New Zealand, and you've talked a lot about the oh my God, now I can't remember the name. What's the kind of meat?
First Light.
First Light meat. She'll tell you all about the First Light meat. But we have all these First Light meats and all these different kinds of meats, and you talk about New Zealand and how they have, resources there, and they don't like to waste, and all the fresh available produce there, right? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because, you're used to all of that, and we come here, and it took us a little while to get there.
Yeah,
Still
still getting there. I mean, I think being in California, it's getting a little closer, but going back to you said before, like I used to live in Chicago, and even though I could go to the Whole Foods, the produce was really nothing like you would even get this way. But New Zealand, I feel like we are the leaders in grass-fed, in our beef. It's our biggest export, next to wool. And we take it very seriously with all the farmers. They're very, we don't like to have any waste, and the way that they repurpose things is really fascinating to me, and especially in the wool industry as well, that they have, now they're using wool as soundproofing in houses, and they've learned that it can warm the house through insulation, and so they're doing that, and also making beautiful furniture and rugs and beds and things like that. So I think that New Zealanders as well are very innovative, and we sort of think we're at the end of the world and we don't have any help, so we have to come up with it on our own. But I think it's an exciting space overall, and what's happening in America now too. And again, like out of COVID, I think all these new ideas and plant-based, I think my kids are all obsessed with plant-based foods, and that wouldn't have been the case 5 years ago, and it's exciting just to see that space.
I think that plant-based, like we have all these plant-based restaurants, Plant Food in Mind, there was another one in New York, and they're very innovative, and they're all very creatively done. So it is taking off, and I do think that there is a new space, because as you take away meat, you take away certain resources too. So there is a whole challenge around that.
Absolutely.
Right? So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that and how that impacts the environment. But that's a challenge too that people are talking about too, because the more we go to one extreme, we then have challenges on the other.
Yeah, I don't know where to go with that. It's somewhat controversial too. I think it all comes down to climate change again, and that's kind of the common denominator that's led young people to really start thinking about how we're treating the planet, and then their carbon footprint, and then having so many cattle on the planet is not good for the atmosphere. And you connect all the dots, and you've had some very vociferous young people making some very good points. And I sympathize with them. And it's so hard. I don't know if you've seen the movie recently that's just come out, Don't Look Up, the Adam McKay
Yes,
movie.
I did just see that.
I think it's the best movie of the year by far.
Yeah.
Because it's not preachy, it's clever. It's not even ostensibly about climate change, but the undertone, of course, that's what it is. It's a metaphor. And I think that, if you talk to people under 15, my daughter will tell you all about it. She writes poems that have been published about polluting the earth.
That's wonderful.
And it's not from me. I don't preach to her. She's already figured it out, and just from reading and online, and also in school. The teachers are, I think, really opening everyone's eyes up to what's happening to the planet. And it's kind of an inevitable, it's kind of a mathematical equation that children can figure out. You have all these billions and billions of people that are consuming all these scarce resources and then putting too much gas into the atmosphere. It's not hard to connect the dots, but yet people who lead our countries somehow aren't willing to really acknowledge it in a meaningful way. And I think to young people, they don't understand that. I even find it quite difficult to comprehend, but of course I've been around long enough to be cynical enough to know really why.
Right.
Because first of all, decision makers are usually people in their 60s who aren't going to be around that many more decades.
No.
And secondly, they're beholden to special interest groups which got them elected, which are inevitably high margin businesses that are traditional businesses, often in the oil and gas sector, or other sectors like insurance, or even the factory farm fast food world. There's a reason why fast food is successful.
Yeah.
Where else do you get a dinner for $4,
Right.
and it tastes really good? It does. Go have any fast food. Tell me it doesn't taste good. Now, what it's doing to your body and the
10 minutes afterwards, you don't feel so good.
Sure,
Yeah.
but I mean, the business model, just from a pure capitalist point of view, is so difficult to rebut. It's like becomes so efficient, and that's hard to change.
Yeah, absolutely. My kids are always talking to me about, I wanted to get a new car, and they were like, well, there was only electric, there's no option,
Right.
but electric. And I think it's amazing that, that generation there's no conversation about it. It's just, that's the way it is. So
That's the nice thing about being young.
yes.
That's so. It wasn't that way when I was young.
No.
It probably was in some ways, from our parents' viewpoint. Right?
Maybe. I don't know. I never remember that. Also, my dad was in the oil and gas business.
Oh, your dad was in the oil and gas business. Okay.
It was. Back then, it was like no one ever thought about the consequences.
No, probably
so much, and
not.
it wasn't even that relevant at the time.
No.
But so that's probably a piece of irony that I do struggle with a little bit. Although I haven't really tried. It's not like a contradiction to me.
I don't think we were quite as aware as we are today back then. I feel like kids today are much more aware and astute of what's going on in the world.
Sure.
I feel like we kind of just did things without implication, without
I agree
thought.
with that. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't such a easy dissemination of information either.
Yeah,
About
the social
how
media.
accessible.
That computer, right?
And Google.
Siri.
Google, Siri, I mean, you name it. Smartphones, digital
tell you
delivery.
everything.
I mean, the whole world is so easy to, bring right into your device now.
So as a social entrepreneur in the next few years, what's the greatest impact you're hoping to have? Small impact, large impact?
That's also a question I've been wrestling with myself. And I'm starting to formulate it now because I never really knew what would happen with my investment in Thrive. When you make an early stage investment in something that is such high beta in our world of being high risk, I think it's probably just going to go out of business. And it almost did go out of business about 2 years after it was founded. And I don't want to focus too much on Thrive, but Thrive has been such a success, and such a success for me as an investor, that I now have to give some thought on my next move in the space. And I haven't got a concise game plan, but I certainly am starting to think quite seriously about it. But anything I do will definitely be from the bottom up. I mean, all of my successes and investments have been small, and started small. I identify a movement or a theme that I think has growth, not only financially but for redemptive things in society, and then I try to help it grow, and I try to empower people. So my whole philosophy is bottom-up empowerment, the classic social entrepreneur, to eliminate injustice and empower people. And if you think about that's happened in the last 200 years. We've had an unprecedented period of growth of the individual, starting with the Gutenberg and the printing press in 1440, and then with Galileo and Newton and laws of thermodynamics that we can apply to our society, empowering people, helping them become more self-actualized. It's just a proven fact. They're then going to start to give back to the society that's helped them. But if we have top-down policy where we're restricting and controlling people, such an autocratic principle, and you see the rise of dictators on autocracies around the world in the last 10 years is very disturbing to me. So my movement from the bottom up, I'm only going back to Thrive just to make the point again.
Of course.
That was a classic bottom up movement. It still blows my mind. I think 4 guys in a basement in Venice now, multi-billion-dollar business that's changed the way a lot of Americans are eating, and that's quite profound. So if we can do that with Thrive, then what can we do next with other forms of food that are good for society? And I'm really trying to think mostly how to educate young people to eat better, and I think that starts with an economic model. I really do. I think people on a whole would eat better if they could, because people in lower income areas have no access to good food.
Absolutely.
And so companies like Thrive are really great, and other companies that have a similar social mission. But America, unlike any other country, has an enormous prevalence of cancers, many cancers that are not found in the rest of the world in the same concentration, and it comes back to diet again. It's like the factory food, fast food model. It just does not work in the long run. It costs society so much money in healthcare costs, and people not able to work, and all of the
It's a vicious cycle, isn't it?
It's such a vicious cycle. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, you did. No, you answered it. I would say that was a pretty good answer.
I'd like to find another Thrive-like movement. I'm not quite sure where that is, but I'm open to meeting with as many innovative and creative and ambitious people as I can, and that helps me to kind of hone my investment thesis.
It's incredible.
I think that's great. I mean, we are investing in pre-seed companies, Next Gen Chef, and so we're constantly getting some pre-seed, small, businesses in the food space that are looking for funding. So if I see anything interesting, I'll
that's
send you
great.
away.
Absolutely. Well, all that cross-pollination is so important, right?
Yes.
That's how innovation happens.
We have a couple in LA that are just finishing around that just sent me a deck. Send it to you. See if you're
Super.
interested.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a couple that are coming our way. We may pass on. We think are interesting. What's right for one person may not be right for another.
Tell me a little about your investment vehicle. I don't know anything about it.
Well, we're just putting it together.
Okay, all right.
So,
good.
but it's new and it's just being formed. But it's going to be called Next Gen Food Fund.
Great.
And we're looking at pre-seed businesses that are building better for you food businesses. And we will be taking our network, mentors, people that come through, and offering them opportunities to invest in it. And I will invest, Next Gen Chef will invest, and our mentors will have an opportunity to invest and act as advisors to them. And that's the opportunity we're giving them. And we're going to sort of break it down for niches. So it'll be like ag funds, and could be lab grown meats, just different things. So there'll be specific niches, because we have so many great resources and mentors that come through that have specific backgrounds, researchers, founders, you name it. But these people have such great backgrounds to be able to offer both, whether it's their backgrounds or money.
Yep.
And so together, it's a really good opportunity.
I found there's not a shortage of money for this space. It's actually just finding people that are willing to spend the time to try to innovate. Excuse me. Because that's not easy.
Yeah.
When you think about how the system works now, especially in America, I go back to this whole factory farming, but then the whole world of pesticides and regenerative agriculture, which is people are starting to understand how bad it is to work the soil and poison the soil for decade after decade after decade. There's some great movies recently about it. Kiss the Earth, which was produced by a very good friend of mine, Ian Somerhalder. And as a rancher, amateur farmer, I prohibit any pesticides on my property. But I have to be honest, I also don't really do it to make a living. So I have to say that to the camera. It's not fair, because that's the first thing people will come and jump and be like, oh yeah, but you don't make a living at it.
Right.
We do. So that means we have to conform to the system. We have to be razor concerned about our margins. And that's not a justification for poisoning the planet, especially poisoning our food supply. People from Monsanto will probably, sue me for saying that, but that's my belief. I feel that's, really important, that as a venture capitalist, you can't just keep paying lip service to these problems. You have to actively do something.
Yeah.
And that's difficult.
It is difficult.
I think having children has probably changed me the most. in terms of now
See
starting
what
to
they're
really,
eating and what
exactly,
they're, yeah.
in the last 10 years. Before that, I wasn't as preoccupied with it, and now I'm obsessed with it.
So how does that impact maybe what you're doing next?
Well, enormously, because obviously anything I think about doing next, I view through the viewfinder of my children in the foreground, because they're going to hopefully be here a lot longer than I am, and they're going to inherit the earth that I've left behind. And you think about that when you have children.
So,
No, it's great.
any recommendations for any founders or entrepreneurs that are watching or listening to this podcast or videocast?
Just believe in the process that you actually can make a difference. You can start small. I've used bottom up 10 times today because I so believe in that philosophy. You can change things, but it has to start from the grassroots. I believe in the uniqueness of the individual. We're all uniquely the same,
Right.
I guess.
How about you, Bridget? Any recommendations for those entrepreneurs
Wow.
from your perspective?
Well, I think it's always, like I said to you yesterday, you never say no to an opportunity, because you never know, even if it's something that you're not even interested in at the time, you never know what you get from that experience and where it can take you and the people that you meet along the way. And yeah.
I always say yes more than you say no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you should always say yes.
That's what I say.
You should
Always say
I
yes.
wasn't raised in that generation.
No.
There's not too much no.
There's- Exactly.
It's like parenting now, though. This is the thing that I find so contradictory. Like a lot of parenting experts will say, my wife's a psychologist, FYI. So it's like, we have to say yes a lot more because there can't be no's. We try, but when they're just like putting on the counter and smashing the dishes, well, that's a no, right?
That's a no.
That's a no. But there are a lot of other things where they want to try something new or create something that maybe creates a mess, or it's not something that I want to spend the time to do, but you have to say yes. And I think that saying yes to, in general, is a really good premise.
Totally. I think as well with young kids, one thing that, and with the whole Black Lives Matter that came out, I have a 17-year-old, and they are so knowledgeable, way more than I am about, that the space and everything. And when things were, people were writing to the government and everything, my daughter had every single link that you could click on, and they were very passionate about it. And I thought it was amazing through social media how they got stuff done on those platforms, and really got the word out there and made themselves known. I think that was using social media in a really exciting way.
In a good way. It's nice to hear that social media being used in a good way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you don't always hear that.
No.
Right now, I feel like we're kind of on the tail end of some of the large social media platforms, useful utility in society. There's a huge backlash against, obviously, Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really
You mean
good
Meta?
for kids? Oh, Meta, sorry. No, yeah. And then, Instagram still, and then TikTok. I mean, it's not really my generation, but I think that experiential learning is so important. And I feel so sad for people that don't have the opportunity to actually go out and experience things, and they feel they can get that same thrill by being in front of a laptop. That's,
Well, and then COVID's not helping.
COVID's been horrible for that. It breaks my heart. Kids need to be outside doing things or playing with their friends, but it's been so complicated. I'm not pointing the finger at anybody again, but it's been a tough time for everyone. So I'm hopeful that this variant maybe will be the last one, and we can get some semblance of normalcy in the spring or summer.
Yeah. Get everyone eating well and getting outside and getting some fresh air.
Exactly.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us. This
My
was
pleasure.
great. I
really
so enjoyed
this.
learning
Thanks for
about
having
this.
me. I appreciate it.
To find out more about this episode of Essential Ingredients and access show notes, check out Next Gen Chef and choose podcast in the menu bar. If you like this episode, head to iTunes or Next Gen Chef's YouTube channel to subscribe. Learn more about Next Gen Chef, the platform that powers this podcast, by checking out our website, or visit us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Next Gen Chef. You can also check out my Instagram at Justine_Reichman. If you have thoughts about this episode or future episode ideas, leave us a comment at Next Gen Chef's YouTube channel or drop an email at team@nextgenchef.com. Thanks for joining us.